Let's talk a little bit about AI and some of the impacts that's having on travel and specifically on travel experiences and tour operators.
Sure. And if we think back, it was almost a year ago that many of us, including Alex, and Bruce, did a presentation on our Travel AI Summit. And the topics we were talking about then are very much the elements in the article that you published, where we were focusing on customer service, we're focused on marketing. The thing that's truly shocking about the report is that it's less than 15% of the people in the Arrival community are leveraging AI. So let's just acknowledge that for a moment, and then look at the reality of how it's going to truly impact the business use. We were just talking about the consumer journey, and this is exactly where we're going to see the impact this year. It started, meaning that people were using it for itineraries. We had all these itinerary planners coming out. The reality are that the people are overwhelmingly using AI now, both for trip planning and for discovery. So both of those are going to be impacted. So I think, and when we think about being discoverable, we were all trying to optimize towards SEO. And some of the big questions that are being asked this year, Steve Hafner being one of them, who is a MetaSearch guy, he thinks that that industry is going to be completely upended, OTAs, by virtue of SEO being impacted by Search GPT. I know a number of people, maybe even people on this call, have switched over their default browser, and there's pros and cons to that. It's almost literally like going to Google and hitting the I'm feeling lucky button, getting one result. But the reality is that people are going to get more and more comfortable with relying on AI planning and booking. And once that actually happens, we all of a sudden, what's the role of searching and then going to OTAs to book? And I think that's going to be an interesting question that's going to come up this year. And obviously there's going to be some interesting debates around that. But I think everyone here on this call has certainly tried to find their brand on the large language models to try and figure out if they've been indexed. And I think that's something that has to be top of mind for everyone. Not only the really cool features like Imagine Experiences, what Alex works on with Anna, and creating these cool AI characters and being able to have these really interesting ways of being able to introduce tour experiences, which you guys have seen at the last two Arrival conferences. That is exciting as well. But I think what we all need to be prepared for is that all of our brands need to be discoverable through the AI tools that consumers are going to be using more and more this year. If you just go to chat.com, there's an interesting story about how the whole domain came about, but with ChatGPT ultimately acquiring that, but it's easier than ever to get access to these AI tools. And because there's multiple LLMs, most people are trying to figure out how they could use it for planning purposes. The number of people I speak to that outside of our industry that are just travelers that ask me the question, I was going to Hawaii, I put an itinerary together. What do you think about that? They're using these tools and we're seeing that. So there's a big shift happening for itinerary and discovery. And I definitely want to encourage everyone to make sure that you are figuring out the best way to make sure your brands are discoverable using AI, because as you know, these are learning models. And so you need to make sure your content is accessible and it's getting indexed, much the way that we used to be familiar with that with SEO. And so this is one you want to get ahead of the curve on, and not all of a sudden be wondering later why your business dropped 50% because all of a sudden you lost all of this SEO activity because Google just doesn't have that business to send you anymore. That's the alarm bell I'm ringing at the beginning of 2025 for everyone to just to take notice and not get left behind. Because I'm certainly seeing that big shift. And I think over the course of the year, we're going to see more and more research and articles. MindTrip is a really good example. MindTrip is one of those companies, they started as B2C. They've now pivoted, so they've expanded to B2B. And I think their whole solution, and they were at our last Arrival conference. They actually, they connected to our community. They're now working with DMOs. They're likely want to work with many of you as well, because they're going to want to make sure that these itineraries can become bookable. And I think, and MindTrip was oversubscribed with investors. Amex has just recently invested in them. And Amex sees the credit card information. And so it's fascinating to see these companies, like 2025 will be the year that these AI companies really take off. A lot of the hype and stuff is fading away now, and you're seeing real measurable, meaningful results coming from companies that are truly embracing AI successfully. I don't know, Steve, if you want to add to that.
Yeah, I've got a couple of things. So I'm going to be a bit of a contrarian. And in the data, it said 12% of operators are actively using AI. I guess my point to that is that it's probably actually a much larger percentage that are using AI, but there's probably a large percentage that don't know that they're using AI because they're using off-the-shelf tools that have since integrated AI into their platforms themselves. So if you're using Zero, for example, if you're using any CRM product now, if you're using any marketing automation product now, if you're using Canva even to do to build ads or, create social posts or anything like that. All of those tools now use AI in some form to assist in that creative process or to simplify processes on those platforms themselves. So a lot of those things are already using AI, which means you're by default, if you're using those products in your business, you're using AI as well. And I think one of the really interesting things that I'm starting to see coming out of this is not just a lot of the generative AI stuff, but we're starting to see AI being used in ways that sort of benefit the infrastructure of the system. So there, more things like accounting, more things like operations. In the case of Peak with their AI pricing, for example, that's a really great case for using AI, because dynamic pricing is really hard to do if you don't have, the underlying infrastructure to do it. You have to build algorithms to take into account certain variables and all sorts of, it can be really, really complex. And for Peak to use AI in order to, basically take all of that learning that is out there and say, okay, give me the best price for this product, and have AI actually determine that for you. It's a little bit of a black box because you have no idea what AI is doing in that circumstance. But as long as it works, I mean, it works, right? So that's a really great use case for using something like AI is in things like dynamic pricing. You could look at it for, managing yield, for example, if you're looking at, determining how many seats you should be allocating to different sales channels. So I think we're going to start to see more AI being used operationally and for things like revenue management, for things like revenue optimization and things like that, and that's really interesting because that has a direct impact to your bottom line. More so, I think, than just the generative side, which has really been where most of the focus has been.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
definitely. That was the beginning of things, was everyone talking about content creation and how to, optimize your tour descriptions, for example. And then, that's how we started, and where have we got to. People are using AI all over the place. And so I've dropped a couple links in the comments, and we'll drop them in the show notes. Arrival's Guide to AI and Experiences shows a number of ways that people are using AI in experience companies. As well, we have a great article from Christian Watts from Magpie Travel, where he goes through how to optimize your tours and your descriptions and your web pages for AI search. So shifting from SEO kind of perspective to how to get found by those AIs that are helping travelers find things to do.